All right, so let's dive into body language. It can be a game changer, especially for non-native English speakers. We're going to be going beyond just words and unpacking those subtle signals, signals that can make a huge difference, especially if you're thinking about taking exams like the IELTS.
Yeah, it's fascinating how much we communicate without even saying a word. Most people are completely unaware of the impact their body language has, but it's constantly shaping how others perceive them.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're tapping into the expertise of Vanessa Van Edwards. She's a behavioral investigator who was recently featured on the Diary of a CEO YouTube channel, and her insights are incredible.
Yeah, she really highlights how everything from our posture to our hand gestures, even the way we dress sends signals that influence whether people see us as warm or competent or both. And that first impression, that split-second judgment, is based 82% on those two factors alone.
82%. That's a huge E number. You're right, most people don't realize how much those unspoken cues matter.
Yeah, and think about the implications. This isn't just about making friends at a party. It affects your career, your relationships, everything. It's even about spotting those energy-draining people we all try to avoid.
That's so true. Okay, so we're sending these signals whether we realize it or not, and other people are picking up on them. What's really interesting is how Van Edwards talks about this cue cycle. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure, the cue cycle is about how we internalize those subtle signals we're receiving. Let's say you walk into a room and someone gives you a slightly negative cue, even unintentionally, like a furrowed brow or a closed-off posture. You might start to feel anxious or unsure of yourself.
Oh, I've totally been there. You start overthinking everything you're doing and saying.
Exactly. And that anxiety then affects your own body language. You might hunch your shoulders, avoid eye contact, and your voice might even start to shake, which ironically reinforces that initial negative impression
Yeah.
and feeds the cycle.
Wow. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I can see how this would be particularly challenging for non-native speakers, who are already dealing with the stress of speaking in a different language.
Absolutely. Think about a high-stakes situation like the IELTS speaking test. If you're hyper-aware of your language skills, you might be even more sensitive to those subtle cues from the examiner.
So if you sense even a hint of disapproval, you could spiral into that cue cycle and completely sabotage your performance. But the good news is, Van Edwards says there's a way to break this cycle, right?
Right. And it's incredibly simple. The key is awareness. Just by labeling those negative cues, you can detach from their power. So instead of letting a furrowed brow throw you off, you might say to yourself, okay, the examiner looks a little tired. It's probably not about me. By consciously acknowledging the cue, you take away its ability to trigger that anxiety spiral.
That's such a great
Yeah.
strategy, especially for those high-pressure situations. It's like you're telling those negative cues, I see you, but you don't control me.
Exactly. And once you've broken that cycle, you can focus on sending the right signals with your own body language.
Okay, so let's talk about those signals. If our listener wants to project competence and confidence, especially in a situation like the IELTS speaking test, where should they start?
Well, Van Edwards breaks down body language into two main categories: power cues and warmth cues. Let's start with those power cues, because they are essential for being taken seriously.
Okay, let's do it. Hit me with those power cues. What are we looking for?
Well, one of the most effective power cues, and one that's easy to implement, is called the steeple. It's when you gently bring your fingertips together, almost like you're forming a little triangle,
Hmm.
or a church steeple.
I've seen people do that, but I never really thought about what it conveyed.
It's subtle, but it conveys a sense of composure and thoughtfulness, especially when combined with good posture and a relaxed demeanor. It can be particularly useful during those moments in the IELTS speaking test, where you're gathering your thoughts before answering a question.
It's like you're saying, I'm confident and in control, even if I don't have the answer right this second.
Precisely. And that can make all the difference in how your response is perceived.
Okay, the steeple got it.
Yeah.
That's a great one to practice. What else?
This next one might surprise you. It's all about the distance between your earlobes and your shoulders. Maximizing that distance is a powerful way to project confidence.
Wait, what? Really? I never would have thought about that.
Think about it. When we're feeling anxious or insecure, we tend to hunch our shoulders, bringing our ears closer to our body. It's a primal protective instinct. But if you consciously relax your shoulders and lengthen your neck, you create a sense of openness and authority.
It's like you're literally taking up more space. And I can see how this would be especially important for the IELTS speaking test, where clear pronunciation is a key factor.
Absolutely. When your posture is open and relaxed, it allows your breath to flow more freely, which translates to clearer, more confident speech.
That's a fantastic tip. I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to my earlobe shoulder distance from now on. Okay, what's next on our list of power cues?
Let's talk about eye contact. It's one of the most powerful tools we have for connecting with others and conveying confidence.
Okay, but there's a fine line between good eye contact and staring someone down, right?
Absolutely. You don't want to make the other person uncomfortable. The sweet spot is around 60–70% eye contact during a conversation.
So not laser focused, but definitely engaged and present.
Exactly. And in the context of the IELTS speaking test, maintaining appropriate eye contact with the examiner is crucial for demonstrating confidence and building rapport. It shows that you're actively listening and engaging with the conversation.
It's like you're saying, I'm here, I'm present, and I'm ready to communicate. Okay.
Uh,
So good eye contact is key. What's our next power cue?
This next one is subtle but incredibly effective. It's called the lower lid flex. It's about slightly tightening your lower eyelids as if you're focusing intently on something.
I'm trying it right now. It does make me feel more focused somehow. But how would someone else interpret this?
It conveys a sense of deep thought and understanding. It's like you're signaling, I'm processing this information carefully. And when you do it while someone else is speaking, it makes them feel like you're truly listening and absorbing everything they're saying.
Oh, that's a great tip, especially for the IELTS speaking test. I can imagine using that lower lid flex. While the examiner is giving instructions or asking a complex question, it would show that I'm paying close attention and taking the time to understand fully.
Exactly. It's a subtle way to demonstrate your engagement and make a positive impression.
Okay, the lower lid flex. I'm adding that to my mental toolbox. What's our final power cue?
Let's talk about vocal power, specifically using a downward inflection at the end of your sentences.
Oh, that's interesting. I know I've heard people talk about uptalk, where the voice goes up at the end of a sentence, almost like a question. Is this the opposite of that?
Exactly. Uptalk can make you sound unsure or hesitant, even if you're not. A downward inflection, on the other hand, conveys confidence and authority. It's like you're punctuating your statements and making them more impactful.
I can definitely see how that would be crucial for the IELTS speaking test. You want your answers to sound clear and assertive, even if you're not completely certain.
Absolutely. And a downward inflection can help you avoid that accidental question effect, where you sound like you're asking for confirmation even when you're making a statement.
That's a fantastic point. So we've got our 5 power cues: steeple earlobe shoulder distance, good eye contact, the lower lid flex, and using a downward inflection. These are great strategies for projecting competence and confidence. But what about warmth? We don't want to come across as too robotic or intimidating.
You're absolutely right. Warmth cues are just as important, especially if you want to create a positive connection with someone. In the context of the IELTS, think about building rapport with the examiner. You want to come across as approachable and engaging, someone they feel comfortable interacting with.
Okay, I'm really interested in these warmth cues now. What are some key ones our listeners should know about?
One of the simplest yet most effective warmth cues is the triple nod. It's a slow, deliberate nod that you use while someone else is speaking.
I use the nod all the time, but what makes the triple nod so special?
It's about the pacing and the intention. A single nod can feel perfunctory, like you're just going through the motions. But a triple nod conveys genuine interest and encouragement. It's like you're saying, I hear you, keep going, I'm listening.
And in the IELTS speaking test, that can be incredibly valuable. You want to show the examiner that you're actively listening and engaged, even if you're struggling to find the right words.
Exactly. The triple nod can help you buy some time while you gather your thoughts, and it demonstrates your active participation in the conversation.
That's a great tip. I'm definitely going to be practicing my triple nod. What's another warmth cue we should be aware of?
The head tilt, it's a subtle gesture, but it conveys a sense of empathy and receptiveness.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time when I'm listening intently to someone. It's almost like you're physically leaning in to hear them better.
Exactly. And that slight tilt of the head sends a signal of vulnerability and openness, which can be disarming and create a sense of trust. In the IELTS speaking test, using the head tilt while the examiner is speaking can help you establish rapport and create a more positive impression.
It's like you're showing them that you're not just a test taker, but a real person who's genuinely interested in the conversation. Okay, triple nod head tilt. What's next on our warmth cue checklist?
This one might seem obvious, but it's crucial. A genuine smile. A real smile can instantly light up your face and create a warm, welcoming atmosphere.
But how do you make sure it's a genuine smile? We've all seen those forced, cheesy smiles that don't quite reach the eyes.
You're right. Authenticity is key. A genuine smile engages the muscles around your eyes, creating those little crinkles or crow's feet at the corners. It's a subtle difference, but it makes all the difference in how your smile is perceived.
So it's not just about showing your teeth, it's about letting that smile reach your whole face.
Exactly. And in the context of the IELTS speaking test, a genuine smile can help you relax, connect with the examiner, and create a more positive and engaging interaction.
It's about showing your human side even in a formal testing environment. Okay, a genuine smile is definitely on the list. What's our next warmth cue?
Lean in. Now, this one can be tricky because there's a fine line between showing interest and being overly aggressive. But a slight lean forward, especially when someone is sharing something important, conveys a sense of engagement and attentiveness.
I've heard that leaning in too much can be interpreted as well. A little creepy. How do you find that sweet spot?
It's all about being mindful of the context and the other person's cues. If they seem uncomfortable or are leaning away from you, back off. But if the conversation is flowing and you feel a genuine connection, a slight lean in can signal, I'm with you, I'm interested in what you're saying.
So it's about reading the room and responding accordingly. In the IELTS speaking test, a subtle lean in might be appropriate while the examiner is giving you instructions or asking a question, as a way to show that you're focused and listening attentively.
Exactly. It's a subtle way to demonstrate your engagement without being overly intrusive.
Got it. Lean in, but with caution. What's our final warmth cue?
This one is fascinating. It's called nonverbal bridging, and it's about using small gestures to close the physical distance between you and the other person.
That sounds intriguing. What are some examples of these nonverbal bridges?
It could be something as simple as handing the other person an object, like a pen or a piece of paper, or slightly angling your body towards them while they're speaking.
I see. It's like you're subtly inviting them into your space and creating a sense of connection.
Precisely. These tiny actions can have a big impact on how people perceive you and the level of rapport you build.
Okay, so we've covered some incredibly valuable power cues and warmth cues. These are great strategies for making a positive impression and connecting with others on a deeper level. But Van Edwards also talks about some common body language mistakes that can sabotage our communication. I'm really curious to hear about those.
Well, one of the most common mistakes, especially when we're feeling nervous or anxious, is what Van Edwards calls the penguin effect. It's when we stand stiffly with our arms glued to our sides.
Oh yeah, I've totally seen people do that. It makes them look uncomfortable and, dare I say, a little awkward.
It does, and it actually restricts your breathing and your vocal power. So
Yeah.
one of the best things you can do to project confidence, especially during the IELTS speaking test, is to use hand gestures.
So loosen up, create some space between those arms and your torso.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use your hands to emphasize your points or illustrate your ideas.
It's about finding that balance between being too stiff and being overly animated.
Precisely. Natural, expressive hand gestures can enhance your communication and make you appear more confident and engaging.
Okay, penguin effect, avoid at all costs. What's another common body language mistake we should be aware of?
Let's talk about peacocking. It's a term often used in pickup artist communities to describe those exaggerated body language displays meant to attract attention.
Peacocking, that sounds a little intense. What does
Yeah.
that look like?
It could involve things like leaning into aggressively puffing out your chest or using overly expansive gestures.
So it's like they're trying too hard to be noticed.
Exactly. And while confidence is attractive, overdoing it can backfire.
Why is that? I would think leaning in would show interest, but you're saying it can be a bad thing.
It's all about finding that sweet spot between showing interest and respecting boundaries. If you lean in too far too fast, it can be interpreted as intrusive or even aggressive. And in the context of the IELTS speaking test, you definitely want to avoid any body language that could make the examiner feel uncomfortable.
So it's about finding that balance between projecting confidence and respecting the other person's space.
Exactly. It's about being authentic and genuine in your interactions rather than putting on a show.
Okay, no peacocking in the IELTS exam. What other body language mistakes should we avoid?
One that can be particularly tricky, especially in a high-pressure situation like the IELTS speaking test, is managing your body language when you're feeling uncertain or stumped by a question.
Well, that's a good one. We've all been there, those moments where your mind goes blank and you feel that panic rising. What happens to our body language in those moments?
Our natural instinct is often to freeze up. We might avoid eye contact, hunch our shoulders, and our facial expressions might betray our anxiety.
So basically, we're sending all the wrong signals. We're broadcasting our uncertainty loud and clear.
Exactly, and that can impact how your response is perceived, even if you manage to come up with a decent answer. Remember, those nonverbal cues play a huge role in how we're judged.
Okay, so what can our listener do to stay composed and project confidence even when they're feeling unsure?
One of the best strategies is to take a deep breath and consciously relax your body. Focus on releasing any tension in your shoulders, neck, and jaw.
It's like hitting that mental reset button.
Exactly. And while you're gathering your thoughts, maintain steady eye contact with the examiner. Remember that 60-70% rule we talked about. It shows that you're engaged and present, even if you need a moment to process the question.
And instead of letting those nervous tics take over, like fidgeting or tapping your foot, try using the steeple gesture. It conveys a sense of thoughtful composure, even if you're feeling a little flustered on the inside.
Exactly. It's a subtle way to signal that you're in control, even if you don't have the answer right away.
Okay, those are great tips for managing those uh-oh moments during the IELTS. But Van Edwards also delves into something else I found fascinating: lie detection. She says the average person's ability to spot a lie is only slightly better than chance.
It's true. We tend to overestimate our lie detecting skills. But there are some subtle indicators that can give us clues if we know what to look for.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are those telltale signs that someone might be fibbing?
One of the most common is what we call incongruence. It's when someone's words don't match their body language. For example, they might say yes while shaking their head no.
Oh, wow, yeah. That's a pretty mixed message.
It is, and it's a red flag that something might be off. Another thing to watch for is a sudden shift in behavior. If someone's been relaxed and open, then suddenly becomes stiff and avoids eye contact. It could be a sign they're uncomfortable or trying to conceal something.
That makes sense. It's like their body is betraying their true feelings.
Exactly. And while you're probably not going to encounter outright lies during the IELTS speaking test, being aware of these indicators can help you interpret the examiner's subtle cues.
So if the examiner seems a bit hesitant, or their body language contradicts their words, it might be a sign that you need to clarify your answer or provide more detail.
Precisely. It's about being attuned to those unspoken signals and adjusting your communication accordingly.
Okay, lie detection 101 check. But Van Edwards also brought up something that really resonated with me: the concept of ambivalent relationships.
Ah, yes. Those relationships where you're constantly guessing where you stand with someone, they can be incredibly draining.
She actually said that these ambivalent relationships can be even more harmful than toxic ones.
It makes sense when you think about it. Toxic relationships are clear-cut. You know they're bad for you, so you can set boundaries and move on. But ambivalent relationships keep you in a state of constant uncertainty.
You're always wondering, do they like me? Do they not? Are they being genuine? It's exhausting.
Exactly. And it can really take a toll on your self-esteem.
So how do we navigate these ambivalent relationships? Are there a way to figure out if someone is truly invested or just stringing us along?
Van Edwards suggests using what she calls the excitement question. Instead of asking a generic "how are you" figure, try asking something like, "What are you most excited about right now?"
Ooh, I like that. It's a way to bypass the small talk and get to the heart of their true feelings.
Exactly. Their response will tell you a lot about their level of genuine interest and enthusiasm. If their face lights up and they start talking passionately about their projects or passions, they're truly engaged.
But if they give you a flat, unenthusiastic response, it might be a sign that they're not as invested in the relationship.
Precisely. It's a subtle way to gauge the authenticity of their feelings.
The excitement question, I'm adding that to my arsenal. Now, before we wrap up, Van Edwards left us with a really thought-provoking question in the original interview.
Oh, yes, I remember that. It was about confronting our pain.
She asked, when in your life did you try to outrun your pain, and what was the consequence? When in your life did you turn and face your pain, and what was the consequence?
Wow, that's a powerful question. It really gets you thinking about those times when we try to avoid discomfort or difficult emotions.
It does. It makes you realize that sometimes the greatest growth comes from facing those challenges head on rather than trying to escape them.
And I think that's a great takeaway for our listener. Whether you're preparing for the IELTS speaking test or navigating the complexities of relationships, remember that you have the power to shape your own experiences.
Absolutely. By understanding the nuances of body language, you can communicate more effectively, build stronger connections,
Yeah.
and ultimately create a more positive and fulfilling life.
So to our listener out there, pay attention to those subtle signals, both the ones you're sending and the ones you're receiving. Use this knowledge to your advantage, and remember, you've got this.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of body language. Until next time.